Thank you for joining us, Alice.
That's quite all right, my pleasure.
And can you tell Jewish Online Magazine about your research at the quarter-life crisis?
I certainly can. Well, the reason I decided to do it was because the term midlife crisis was obviously very well known and it was very recognised, and there seemed to be a lot of support around that time in people's lives. But actually what I was noticing was that people a lot younger were kind of experiencing a similar type of crisis, but it was getting ignored because people, they were a lot younger, and they just, the attitude tends to be kind of, oh well,
Get on with it.
Get on with it, yeah, exactly. And having sort of read around the subject, I thought actually there is something here. There was a bit of research on it. So I decided to do a bit more about the quarter-life crisis, but also how coaching is supporting people in that age group through that period. And so the research that I did, basically what it found was that it's actually slightly different from a midlife crisis in that in the midlife crisis there's a kind of tension between responsibility in terms of kind of financial commitments, maybe family commitments, a sense that kind of, is time running out for me now, can I really change direction? You're nodding your head, so I think you're relating to all of this. Whereas the quarter-life crisis is kind of almost the opposite in that people are so free from responsibility that it's kind of a paradox of choice, because they could literally do anything that they want to do, and it seems to be sort of spurred on by when something finishes. So say, people leave university or school or something like that, and suddenly it's kind of like, oh my gosh, this is the real world, what on earth am I going to do with it? And it's a very confusing time from people, and they're kind of desperately trying to become independent, but because of the economic environment at the moment, it's incredibly difficult. It's not so easy to buy a property, move out of home, do a job that you love for a reasonable amount of money, and all that kind of thing. So it kind of causes a sense of frustration because they're desperate to kind of grow up, but it's kind of society's not really letting them. And there's a lot of, because of the media, there's a lot of comparisons that go on, especially with Facebook. People are constantly seeing, oh my god, my friend is so much more
There's so many issues, isn't there, for 20, 30-year-olds that people don't really realise, and probably themselves they don't really realise as well.
Exactly, and because it stems from having so much opportunity, and globalization means that you could move abroad, you could do anything. Society's reaction is, what are you complaining about? You've got it all. Whereas actually, that seems to be what's underpinning the problem. So there are a lot of people feeling like that, and America have been very good at embracing that and providing support for people of that age. And this country, we tend to be about 10 years behind, so hopefully we're going to catch up a bit, and that's why I wanted to do the research, to sort of get the word out that actually, you're not alone in this.
There's support.
And that there are loads of people feeling like this, and you're not, it doesn't mean that you're abnormal, or, because a lot of people feel very isolated because they don't talk to people about it.
Can I ask, Alice, is life workplace coaching similar to the practices and services of a counsellor?
No, they are, obviously they are a talking therapy, in that you talk, you work together, and that's how you come up with the solutions. But counselling is very much about understanding how you've got to where you are now. It's very much about your past, and talking about your past and making the connections and understanding yourself a lot more. Whereas coaching is very much, okay, we're going to take you as you are now, okay, obviously where you come from is going to have an impact on the way that you think and things like that. But it's more about identifying where you're at now and then focusing on the future as opposed to the past. It's very future focused, which is the main difference. It's much more practical in that there are exercises, you know, it's about goal setting and action planning and really having a clear direction as opposed to just sort of talking about your past, which is much more what a counsellor would do with you. So yeah. That's the main difference.
What issues slash concerns do people have in a workplace that would consider them contacting you, Alice?
Well, my workplace coaching is very different in that what I actually do there is what I wanted to do was, because there seems to be this idea that coaching in the workplace is just for managers, it's just for the executives, and actually what I do is open it up to everybody. And actually I might, you know, work with them around being a better manager if they are a manager, but a lot of it is mainly to do with, you know, confidence building, being assertive in the workplace, discussing sort of any concerns that they have around their team members. You know, maybe
would you perhaps get involved in any bullying issues, maybe, if there were?
Yeah, because a lot of bullying is probably around those kind of issues, and feeling confident enough to maybe report it to a manager, or, you know, being assertive enough to speak to whoever's bullying them if they feel strong enough to do that.
Is that one of the problems today in the workplace, or perhaps in personal people's life, that people lack confidence and motivation for a direction?
Yes, yeah. A lot of the clients that I work with, when you sort of get to the crux of it, it's about self-esteem, self-belief. You know, everyone can appear confident, but actually, yeah, a lot of it seems to be about self-belief and getting somebody to a point where they actually think, I deserve this, I want this, I'm going to go for this. And what was the second half of the question?
About motivation.
Oh, motivation. Yeah, and a lot of work that I do is around, because of one of the theories that I work quite close to is the cycle of change, which is the idea that if you're thinking of making a change, you'll always go through a certain amount of stages. And a client might come to me and it might be evident that they're kind of, you know, they're contemplating change, but there's still some advantages of not changing. And there are certain techniques that I will use to sort of try and motivate them and move them into the next stage, so that change is more possible.
How hard is it for people to recognise that they have problems that need addressing?
Well, that actually ties into the motivation thing, because the first stage of that cycle is when somebody is in, you know, complete denial, and it's kind of like, well, actually I'm okay, but everyone else seems to think that I have to change. And it's very hard to work with somebody in that stage.
Is it very hard for that person to make that first phone call to you? You know, they need the motivation to make that first phone call to you.
Yeah. So if they're already calling me, then they're probably in the next stage. Set my business up, I think it's getting on to about 2 years ago now.
Okay.
But previously I actually qualified as a probation officer. So that role is actually very similar, although you're coaching
related, yeah.
offenders, it's still change. You're still coaching them through the change process, trying to work out how to motivate them. You know, what are the factors that is causing this behaviour, all that kind of thing, their thinking patterns. So all in all, that's been about 6 or 7 years.
I'm sure Jewish online magazine viewers are familiar with the Ten Commandments, but also understand, Alice, that there are the 10 Commandments of Self-Esteem.
Yes, there are. I have the book in the next room. Yes.
Can you share something with us about self-esteem?
Yeah, I think self-esteem is tricky because it often gets, like I said, it often gets confused with confidence, which is actually something quite different. So I think the main thing I talk to clients about is tuning into how they feel in certain situations. So I remember one of the commandments to sort of, you know, think about who you spend most of your time with. And if you're, you know, recently I was talking to a client about how, you know, her friends were very sort of, they're high achievers and they're always kind of striving forward, and I think she just had kind of lost herself in terms of like, oh, you know, well, I need to be like that and I'm not being like that and I really need to, you know, get going. And actually when I sort of said to her, you know, self-esteem is kind of about self-acceptance and kind of focusing on the now and that kind of thing. And you almost like, you just saw kind of the weight lift off her shoulders.
Fantastic.
That actually if she was going to spend time with people who she felt were similar to her, who really appreciated her and accepted her, and you know, it would be much more fun and life would just be a little less stressful. And so I think that's one of the main things about self-esteem, is kind of really tuning into who you are, accepting that, and surrounding yourself with people who love you for who
And
you
you're
are.
able to help people increase their self-esteem as part of your life coaching.
Yeah, mainly through self-awareness and kind of being positive about who they are and what they want and embracing that more than anything. So.
Can you tell our viewers, Alice, about the concept of visual boards?
Visual boards, yes. Mine is in the other room.
Okay.
Do you want me to get it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so vision boards. So this is my vision board, which I have in my living room, up high so I can see it all the time. And basically this is my reminder of what I want in the future and everything that I'm working for. So
at the top we have love redeems all.
yeah, so this is talking about having a happy and a bright relationship and something that's fun and having a companion and all that kind of thing. And this is my idea of kind of relaxed fun time and just chilling out in the garden, doing travelling, relaxing, because I know I'm not very good at that. So I have this to remind me that it's okay to relax and treat yourself and sleep as much as you can.
And then we have home sweet home.
Yeah, and creating a nice environment at home, you know, hopefully having kids one day, and keeping life simple, not overcomplicating things. So the idea of vision boards is that, I mean, you can do them in different aspects of your life. This is my, you know, my private life, I suppose, but you could do one for what you want out of a career. So if you decided that, you know, you want to change career but you're not really sure into what, you could grab loads of magazines and just pull out pictures that really excite you. You know, is it about having fun? Is it about being in an office?
This also helps with your confidence and motivation, doesn't it, Alice?
Yeah, definitely, because if you have it as a point of reference, you can always tune into it and you remind yourself what you're aiming for.
It's a great concept.
Yeah.
It's a great concept. As well as life workplace coaching, does exercise have a role in increasing your confidence and motivation?
Massively, yeah. And I think that's something I've learned myself more recently, in that I used to go to the gym quite a lot, but I didn't find it overly fascinating. And my partner is actually very into exercise, and I think he's introduced me to the idea that exercise doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be the gym 5 times a week if you don't like the gym. You know, it can be walking, power walking is fantastic. It can be, you know, cycling, especially with the Boris bikes now, you know. if you just travel a few stops on the tube, you know, why not just grab a bike? And that immediately, because confidence is about kind of dealing with the unknown, and the more you do things that are out your comfort zone and that kind of thing, the more confident that you feel. You're like, oh wow, you know, I can just hire a Boris bike, it's really not that difficult. Or you know, yeah, so cycling, walking, you know, boxing classes are really, and Zumba as well, people are just loving that because it's just so much fun. Yeah, it's just, it doesn't have to be boring, and it makes you feel so much better. And you know, it's biological. The hormones that are released when you do exercise are proven to be linked to happiness and well-being and all those things.
Can one have the same confidence in one's personal life as one's work life?
How do you mean?
Are they interchangeable? I mean, can you bring the confidence home from your work and bring it into your personal life?
Yeah, definitely. And what I actually work with a lot of my clients is the kind of idea of consistent self, because a lot of people, they might be very assertive at home in their relationship, but suddenly they get to work and they're kind of a meek little mouse, or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, and it's about kind of recognising, well, you've got the ability to do it. There's no question there. So you know what's preventing you from being consistent in those scenarios, and bringing that confidence across.
Is there a problem? Perhaps people maybe take their work concerns, problems home with them that might create problems in their personal life.
Yeah, definitely. And it puts a lot of strain on a relationship if you're very unhappy at work and you don't really know who to talk to about it. And you know, a lot of my clients say, oh, you know, coming to you has really improved my relationship because I'm not putting that all on my partner. So yeah, it's quite effective from that point of view.
And if viewers of this video clip, Alice, want to contact you, how can they do that?
They can send me an email. My email address is simply coaching@alicestapleton.com. My website is alicestapleton.com, and that's got all my contact details on, telephone number, everything like that. And even if, you know, what I do is I have a complimentary introductory session with everybody where it's merely about discussing coaching, what you might want from it. It's not a kind of, I've signed up now, unless you really want to, and that's great. But you know, don't feel that there's any pressure. If you just think, you know, maybe this is for me, it might help me, let's just have a chat and see what happens.
Alice, do people want to talk more than perhaps in previous generations, do you think?
I think they do with coaches, for example, because what I find is they're not talking as much as they used to in their personal environment, because now we seem to, if we want to be in contact with a friend, we text them or we email them or we send them a Facebook message, and the idea of picking your phone up and calling somebody seems to be so kind of, oh no, you know, what if I interfere with what they're doing? Or it just, people, they don't seem to be they don't seem to be talking in that way anymore, which is why I think people are more likely to want to speak to a coach, because they're not getting that support from their other relationships so much anymore. And I do find that quite worrying. You know, people you see on the trains, everyone's got their iPods on, and if somebody merely says, oh hi, you know, how are you, everyone immediately thinks weirdo. And you think, how awful is that? You know, we're not even talking to our neighbours anymore.
You know, it's funny because yesterday we were in the kitchen, my wife and a few of my children, and all of us, apart from my youngest, were on our phones texting. And my youngest said to me, "What's going on? You've got no time for me. All you do is text, and you're on your mobile phones all the time." And it just hit me there,
Yeah,
Alice.
definitely. Yeah, and even, you know, when you go out for dinner with people, the phones are always there, and it just seems to interrupt everything. You know, you might be having a fantastic conversation with your friend and their phone goes and they're immediately kind of like, "Oh, who's that?" It's like there's always something better going on. I just worry that if the technology is kind of eliminating what's really precious about a one-to-one relationship, which I guess is what people get from coaching, and that objective support and that real kind of cheerleader attitude, and just merely talking and having somebody to listen with no judgment or anything like that, which you just don't really get from texting or that kind of thing.
Do you think perhaps maybe part of the curriculum at schools, maybe they should encourage people, students, to stop to teach people to talk rather than use their technology to talk on behalf of them?
That's an interesting idea. When kind of quite early on in my career, I think one of my biggest learning curves was that not everyone has really strong communication skills, and they don't know how to share their problems. They don't know how to talk assertively to somebody. They think it's, you know, creating conflict, and they shy away from it. And that's actually something that I work with people on, is about how to have difficult conversations or how to share your problems with somebody and work through them with your partner or your family or your manager or that kind of thing. And it's that assumption that you think everybody would be able to do that, and it's not a failure on anyone's part. But yeah, I think maybe in school, if that skill is developed, then, you know, that would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Thank you. Well, certainly, having spoken to you for the last 15-20 minutes, Alice, it's given me certainly an insight into life, workplace coaching, and thank you ever so much for joining Jewish Online Magazine.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.